So, you have Talisman, the base game, huh? Yeah, you've probably played it lots and lots, huh? You've probably won. You've claimed the crown of command. Domination is yours. But you want more? Well, which expansion should you buy next? Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and today I thought I'd answer the question, which Talisman expansion should I buy next? Yes, we get lots of questions here at Imp Towers about fantasy, and one of the most popular questions is, well, I've got Talisman, I've just bought the base game, which expansion should I buy next? And I started to answer those over the years, and I've come up with a little formula because there are 14 expansions, so if you're pretty new to the game, it could be overwhelming. But fear not, because here at the Bottled Imp, we are here to help. So that is the big question. Which Talisman expansion should you buy? Now I'm talking about the 4th edition, which is the revised edition from Fantasy Flight, which I think was first published in 2008. Obviously, well, not obviously, but if you don't know, but Games Workshop were the original people that made the game. They still own the copyright to everything, but they license it out. Fantasy Flight were lucky enough to take it on. They revamped it, and this is the edition that we're talking about. So I like to group the expansions into 3 categories, and I've called them big expansions, mini expansions, and mini expansions. Yes, but which one to buy first? Well, I would go for one of the mini expansions first. It's a good place to start, and the reason why is there's more characters, more adventure cards, and more spell cards. Because some of the big expansions, well no, all of the big expansions have extra board bits to add on. So it's slightly more complicated. But which mini expansion should you go for first? Well, these are the mini expansions. We have the Reaper, we have the Frost March, we have the Sacred Pool, we have the Blood Moon, we have the Firelands, and we have the Harbinger. And some are more complicated than others. So out of these, I would go for the Reaper expansion first, simply because there's new characters, there's new adventure cards, new spells, there's Warlock quests, and also there's a Reaper figure. So the new characters are Sage, Dark Cultist, carefully I say that, Merchant, and the Knight. There's 90 new adventure cards, 26 new spell cards, 12 Warlock quests, and the Reaper figure. There's no extra board, so what you do is, I guess the main new mechanic, or there's 2 new mechanics. One is the Reaper figure. Now you get a little figure, and it is a non-playable character. What happens is, when any player rolls a 1 for movement, that player then gets to move the Reaper at the end of their turn around the board in any direction. So you then roll for the Reaper's movement. And what happens is, you're trying to land it on another player, because that player then has to roll the die and take the effects. You get a little card, which is the Reaper card, which has the outcome. So 1 to 3 is normally pretty bad. 4, 5, and 6, you normally get some sort of reward. So you're trying to nobble your fellow players by using the Reaper. There is also the 12 Warlock quests, so when you go to the Warlock's Cave, in the base game, you basically roll a die and you see which quests you have to fulfill in order to get a talisman. With this, these are actual quests, and it might be, give up a life. It might be give gold to, just discard some gold. It might be discard a trophy, an enemy that you've killed, a creature that you've killed. So it can be quests like that. So it just adds a bit more flavour to the game. There is also, I would then say, the Blood Moon is the next one to get. So if you're happy with the Reaper and you understand the mechanics, the Blood Moon, very similar. It has new characters. It has the Grave Robber. It has Vampire Hunter. It has the Doomslayer. 111 new adventure cards, 10 new spell cards, 1 time card, 6 I knew I'd mess that up. Lycanthrope cards, 1 werewolf figure, and 3 new alternate ending cards. So there's a few more mechanics going on here, but the main mechanic is the same as the Reaper. You get a little werewolf figure that's like that. And you get to move him about. Again, he is a non-playable character. We play it that if you roll a 6 for your movement, you get to move the werewolf. But I think technically in the rules it is if you roll a 1. So you roll a 1 on your movement. At the end of your go, you can move the werewolf. You roll for the werewolf's movement. And again, you're trying to land it on a player because the player then rolls the die. If they get 1 to 3, it's pretty bad. 4 to 6 is some sort of reward. There is also the time card. This mechanic is to do with night and day. So now there's night and day within Talisman. So it's always going to be day or it's always going to be night. So that happens when an event card gets pulled from the adventure card. You flip it from night or you flip it from day. Or some of these new adventure cards will say if it is night, flip it to day. If it is day, flip it to night. And therefore there are consequences that happen. There are 3 new alternate ending cards. So normally when you get to the Crown of Command, you start casting the command spell and you start knocking out the players, you start killing them off and you win the game. With these 3 alternate ending cards, there are different endings. Now you can only play one of those at a time, so what we like to do is sort of randomise them, so we pick them blind and we don't reveal them. There is, I've gone into more detail about how to play that mechanic in the Blood Moon review, so check that out. Then we have the Frost March. I would go for the Frost March next. Again, fairly similar. It's got the new characters: Leprechaun, Necromancer, Ogre Chieftain, Warlock. It's got 84 new adventure cards. It's got 20 new spell cards. It's got 24 new Warlock quest cards, which are similar to the ones that you've had previously, and 3 new alternate endings. So again, there's nothing really new in terms of mechanics to learn here. It's just more of the good stuff. Then we have the Sacred Pool. I would go for the Sacred Pool next. It has new characters: Magnus, no, how do you pronounce it? Magus, I think that's how you pronounce it. Cleric, Chivalric Knight, Dread Knight. That's a pretty cool character, that one. There are 72 new adventure cards. There are 16 new spell cards. There are 24 new quest reward cards. So these are extra rewards. You can either take a talisman if you complete a Warlock's Quest card, or you can take one of these reward quest cards, so you don't have to get a talisman. There are 12 stable cards, 4 neutral alignment cards, and 3 new alternate ending cards. So again, there's more alternate endings, and again, there's a hidden and revealed mechanism, but I've gone through that again in the Sacred Pool review. Plus 12 stable cards. It's just new things that you can buy, new horses. There's a war horse, I believe. There are new things that you can buy within these the stables. And they're 4 neutral alignment cards. So each character is either good, neutral and evil. These ones just basically mean if you turn neutral for whatever reason, you might get a spell cast on you, or whatever reason you turn neutral, it just denotes to yourself to remind you that you are neutral and to other players. Then I would go for the Firelands. This is slightly more complex, this one. It has new characters: the Dervish, the Nomad, Gin-Blooded, and also the Warlord. It's got 81 new adventure cards. It's got 19 spell cards. It's also got 19 terrain cards. And what these are is these are like terrain cards that change the space of one of the spaces. So it might be that it turns the ruins into the fields because it gets burnt away. There's a burn mechanism. So it can change actual spaces on the board. And also there's a burn mechanic where some of the new adventure cards actually say burn an object that is not burn protected, so that you have to sort of discard some objects or some followers, maybe, can't remember the precise details, but you burn cards. It might say burn the top 5 cards of the adventure deck if they're not protected. There's a little symbol of protected objects. So again, there's a new mechanic. And again, I've gone into further detail about exactly how to play the Firelands in our review. There is the Harbinger next. That is the last one of the mini expansions. Now this one is slightly more complex again, so that's why I've sort of put it at the end. It's the most complex, I would say, of the mini expansions. There are new characters. We've got the Celestial, we've also got Possessed, and we've also got Ascended Divine. There are 75 Harbinger cards, 10 spell cards, 10 terrain cards, 32 omen cards. There are also 2 new alternate endings. So there are 75 Harbinger cards. Now these are different. You don't mix them in with the adventure deck. They are different cards. And it focuses on the non-playable Harbinger character. So again, like the Reaper and the Werewolf, you get a little figure. And it also focuses on the 7 omens that can bring about the end of the world. There are these little omen cards, and if you kind of burn through those, it's the end of the game and no one wins. Now again, I've gone through in further details exactly how to play the Harbinger expansion in our review. But I would say, again, because if you're new to Talisman, you played the base game, go for the mini expansions first, but probably go for the Reaper or the Blood Moon, because they are pretty much the simplest to understand, and it adds just that extra little level. It adds a new little mechanic to it as well. Then we have the big expansions. Woo-hoo! Now these ones, yeah, get excited, because these ones have corner boards attached to them, or some sort of board that you would either replace the main board with, or you overlay on top of the board. And then we'll get into the finer detail in a second. So these ones are the Dungeon, the Highland, the Dragon, the City, the Woodland, and the Cataclysm. Oh, exciting. So I would say the first one to get would be the Highland. And the reason why, it's just more of the same. There is a corner board. It's an L-shaped corner board that you attached, well, you kind of put it next to the main base board. There's no new real mechanic, but it's more of the same. It just adds more spaces. So your character can go into the Highlands, and you go through the Highlands. And there are new characters to play. There's the Alchemist, the Valkyrie, the Highlander, the Vampiress, if that's how you pronounce it, the Rogue, and the Sprite. There are 142 Highland cards, 10 spell cards, 12 adventure cards, and 4 relic cards. So again, like the Harbinger, there is a different deck. These are 142 Highland cards. So when you're in the Highland area, in that region, you pick from the Highland card deck and not from the adventure deck. The spells, the new spell cards, yes, you mix them in. Like any new spells that you get, you mix them into the big main spell deck. There are 12 new adventure cards. Yes, you mix those into the main deck. And there are 4 relic cards. Now, these 4 relic cards are when you get to the end of the Highland, you fight the Eagle King. And if you win, you get to choose a relic. And the relic is pretty a powerful object. There is also 3 new alternate ending cards. So as I say, this one, if I can say it that way, this one is the easiest of the corner boards of the big expansion. So if you're thinking, I've mastered some of the mini expansions, but I want more, I want a little bit more complexity, go for this one, because it is more of the same. There's not really too much new mechanics going on here. Then I would go for the Dungeon. So once you've got used to the Highland, going off into another region, we have the Dungeon. There are new characters: the Gladiator, Amazon, Swashbuckler, Gypsy, Philosopher. There are 128 dungeon cards, 10 adventure cards, 20 spell cards, and 10 treasure cards. Plus, like the Highland, there is an L-shaped corner board that you put onto a corner. And then when you get to one of the squares, it says you can then go into the dungeon. And you go into the dungeon, and again, like the Highland, you will be taking from its own deck, the dungeon cards. You won't be taken from the adventure deck or the Highland cards, you'll be taken from the dungeon cards. And the reason why I would say get this one second, because this one always feels harder to go through. It seems that the monsters are tougher in here. So if you just started playing Talisman, and you've set up the base game and you attach the dungeon to it, I wouldn't go in there straight away if you've not powered your character up a little bit, because the monsters do seem beefier than the base game characters, and also the Highland, monsters and enemies. So that's why I'd say, yeah, maybe get this one second. It is exactly the same really as the Highland, so you could go for the dungeon or the Highland first. The City, that is the next big one. There are new characters, quite a few. There's the Spy, the Tinkerer, which I love, the Tinkerer, the Cat Burglar, Tavern Maid, Bounty Hunter, Elementalist. Ooh. And there are city cards, so just like the Highland and also the Dungeon, it's got its own deck. So there's the city cards, there's 18 wanted poster cards, there's new purchase cards for the various new stores in the city. There are 3 new alternate ending cards, Plus, there is the L-shaped corner board. So now, if you've bought the Highland, you've bought the dungeon, you've now got the city, 3 of the corners of the base game are filled with these new regions. Now, this one is slightly more complicated than the dungeon and the Highland, because rather than just going around and you're just landing on spaces, you get a little bit of a choice. There is it's like a city. So you have a street that is the sort of main pathway, but you can go into, and off of that, there are shops. You can go into stores and you can purchase things. And there's loads of different cool things you can get there. You can buy pets, you can buy potions, you can buy really cool armor. And you can also get locked up in jail as well, which I don't recommend. So there are various things you can do there. So these new purchase cards, they are specific to those shops. You can't get those objects anywhere else in the game, unless I guess there's a mechanic that says, you can just magically get something from one of those shops. But the traditional way is you have to go into the city to physically go into those shops to get the really cool stuff. There are wanted posters. And what they are, they're like mini quests. You can choose to do a wanted poster, and it's normally bounty. So it might say, deliver an enemy of strength 7. And that can be, you don't have to fulfill those, unlike the Warlock's Quest. You have to do a Warlock's Quest before you can go past the Valley of Fire, or even the Portal of Peril, I think. But you have to do it. But with the wanted posters, you don't have to fulfill them. But it's a good way of getting gold. You will get gold reward if you do these wanted posters. It might even say kill another character, or take a life from another character, and you will get gold for it, which is a really good way if you want to buy some cool stuff. Do some of the wanted posters. And again, we've done in-depth review of the city as well, so check that out. We have the Woodland next. Now, I'd say this one gets a little bit more complex. They've added new mechanics to this, but they've also added new characters. It's always great getting new characters. We have the Totem Warrior, we have the Scout, we have the Spider Queen, we have the Ley Walker with the Ancient Oak. We have 103 Woodland cards, so again, it's got its own deck. 10 adventure cards that you shuffle into the main one, 20 path cards, 14 destiny cards, 5 spell cards, and 3 new alternate ending cards. Plus there is another L-shaped corner board. So by now, if you've got all the big expansions, well not all of them, but you will have 4 corners taken up by 4 different regions. You need a bigger table, is basically what you then need to do as well. So not only do you need to buy the expansions, but you need to buy a new table. It has new mechanics in this one. This is why I would say get used to the other corner boards first before you delve straight into the Woodland, because the new mechanics are there's fate tokens. So you've probably wondered why the fate tokens have a light side and a dark side on the base game. Has no bearing in any other expansion apart from the Woodland, because depending on which one you choose, Fate now has a light and dark side, and they have various outcomes throughout the game. There's destiny cards, there's also path cards. Now, we haven't got time to go through exactly the details of those, but the Woodland cards, again, they're similar. They're just like the adventure cards, but the destiny cards and the path cards are different, and I would recommend watching our review of that, because I go into great depth of exactly how to play those. So it is a bit more complicated. And I would say that, you could get it straight away. Obviously, I'm sure you're intelligent enough, especially if you watch a review of how to get your head around it. But it is more complicated. There are new mechanics. So if you are just playing the base game, the other 3 expansions are fairly similar. The city is slightly more complicated, but it is still, you roll the dice, you move, and you do what it says on the space. With the Woodland, there's other complications going on. Then we have the Dragon. Now, I would probably say this one is very much probably the more complex of all the expansions to really get your head around. It has new characters. You've got the Dragon Hunter, the Dragon Priestess, the Dragon Rider, the Minotaur, the Fire Wizard, and the Conjurer. It's got 168 Dragon cards, so again, it's got its own deck. It's got 3 Draconic Lord cards. It's also got 3 new alternate ending cards, plus it's got various different tokens as well. It has a dual-sided inner region board, so it's got a board that's got both sides are printed on, and you can play on both sides. You overlay that over the base game, and it takes up the inner region. On the one side is the original inner region spaces, but with new tactics on it, so they've kind of redesigned, and you have to do different things on the same. So you've got the Pit Fiends, for example, but that's slightly different. You've got Dice with Death, that's slightly different. So again, it's got new mechanics. Or you can play the other side. Now you need to decide this right at the beginning of the game. Now the other side is the Dragon Tower. And it's a two-dimensional depiction of going up the stairs. But again, there's different rules, there's different mechanics for that, which are different from all the other expansions. So I would recommend watching our review of that because it does get quite complicated. You do have to keep track of things because there are these Dragon Lords that are in play all the time during the game. There's 3 Dragon Lords that kind of are ruling the Crown of Command, if you like. One of them has, conquered the Crown of Command, and you're trying to get to the Dragon Lord to try and kill the Dragon Lord. But the thing is, there's 3 of these Dragon Lords, and they vie for power throughout the game. So the Dragon Lords will change. Whoever's in charge changes. There's various tokens. You get Dragon Rage. But it's very complicated. I found it very complicated, and it did take us quite a few goes to kind of learn to play it correctly, and also to remember to do things. There's certain things that you have to remember to do each turn. Again, if you're really interested in that one, I would check out a review because we go into it a lot more in depth. And then we have the final biggie one, which is the Cataclysm. Oh yes, it all kicks off in this one. New characters are the Black Knight, the Scavenger, the Mutant, the Arcane Scion. I don't think that's how you pronounce it. S-C-I-O-N. I think it's got a silent something in there or other. But it's also the Barbarian as well. It's got 47 adventure cards. It's got 10 new spell cards, 6 Warlock cards, 6 new talismans. Got special abilities on them as well, so they're very special. It's got 24 new purchase cards, we've got 10 terrain, we've got 40 Denzian cards, and 24 Remnant cards, if that's how you pronounce it. Plus, it's got a new main board. Yes. Throw out your base game board. Well, don't actually throw it out, just put it to one side. Yes, it's a completely new board. It replaces the original base game board. And what's happened is that the backstory is that, yes, there's devastation has reached the land, there's a cataclysm has happened, and it's post-apocalyptic, I guess. Everything's devastated, so the spaces are the same, but they're destroyed. Things that were there, like the church, is kind of no longer there. It's ruined. The graveyard is decimated. All the tavern has been ruined. Everything's in chaos. I know, shock horror. And so it's pretty much almost like they've started again. There are these new Denzian cards. So there's these little kind of people that are trying to sell stuff, sort of one-man band or one-woman bands that turn up to try and sell you stuff. So it's a different way of playing the game. There are Remnant cards, again, that crop up that are there from the beginning. And you have to, so it is there's lots of different new mechanics that you have to get your head around. So I think, I might be wrong about this, but I think if you're used to the base game, to then suddenly buy this one straight away, it is, pretty much like buying a new game, is a lot to take in. So I would recommend buying all the 4 corner pieces first, the Dragon one first, the mini expansion, so you're really immersed. You know how to play all the expansions. You know how to, play more of the easier ones. The Cataclysm kind of draws a line. You can play the 4 corner boards that is compatible with this base game one. Sorry, the Cataclysm board. So it is compatible. But again, I would sort of, doing that would be madness unless you're really familiar with all the expansion corner boards as well. There are 6 new talisman cards that give you extra special abilities, so that adds a lovely bit of flavour. And again, we've done a full depth review on how to play the Cataclysm. I would definitely check that out before you purchase. Then we have just 2 little mini expansions. Little mini expansions there as the Nether Realm and also the Deep Realm. The Nether Realm is basically, it's a deck of 36 cards. It's adventure cards. They are to be used with the 3 new alternate ending cards. And that's it. So as I say, it's a mini expansion. There is also another one, the Deep Realm mini expansion. There's 2 realm cards, there's 20 tunnel cards, there's 20 bridge cards, and it requires the dungeon and the city expansions. And as you can probably hear, there's an expansion going on. What we're doing at Imp Towers, just to let you into a little secret, we're going to build a dragon platform. Yes, we're going to try and house dragons on the top of Imp Towers. So we're getting the scaffolding up there, building it as we talk. Yes. Yeah, so you do need the dragon expansion. You do need the dungeon expansion and the city expansion because the realm cards link those two expansions. It's quite a clever one, so you can jump from one expansion to the next without going back to the base game. The realm cards, as I say, they're a bridgeway between those two realms. So that's like a pretty cool little mini expansion. So there we are. That is all 14 of the expansions. There we go. Yes, Talisman. Which Talisman expansion should I buy next? Hopefully that has answered your questions. Yes, so I started with the first one that you should buy first, you know, basically because of its ease to understand, and then they get, you know, and then I've done it in order of which ones you should really buy. But that's just my opinion. Obviously, do your research. You might just go, do you know what, I'm going to jump in with the Cataclysm board, let's go for it, and why not? It's all good fun. To be honest, they're all good expansions and they're all compatible with each other. Enjoy it, fill your boots. Just to remind you, we have done the base game review and in-depth on how to play it. We've also done all of the expansions, even the mini expansion reviews and how to play those. So if you are still in doubt, check those out as well. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're a dragon and you have dragon rage.